Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule, where Mizzou football, their undefeated season, has come to I'll call it a crashing end. 49-39 at the hands of the LSU Tigers. They wore their Columbia jackets to Columbia, or I guess Brian Kelly didn't. He was in a t-shirt on the sidelines. But that clip was funny. But I'm deflecting. We got to talk about this game. Kenny and I are going to break it down. Yeah, final in Columbia, 49-39. Mizzou loses to LSU in a game that had a lot of good, a lot of bad, and some ugly. All early afternoon long. Crowd was popping. It was a sellout. Obviously, they had a little bit of dull uniforms. Peyton couldn't do his uniform review but they had a little bit basic uniforms on a blackout. And yeah, came out really, really strong to start the game. And I think, Kenny, that's where we should start first. Let's start with the good. There's a lot to break down in this game. Obviously, it was as high scoring as we expected it to be when we previewed it with Max. The offense on both sides was firing, but Mizzou got out to an awesome start in this game. After forcing LSU into a punt they had a really miserable first drive. It was definitely their worst drive of the game. They marched right down the field, punched it in. Theo Wees, I should say, caught. There was two dimes from Brady Cook to Theo Wees on that first drive. First one he couldn't reel in. Second one he got. And then they went for two, little bit of just more of a punch in the mouth. I was texting you and some of our other Mizzou colleagues, going for two, a great first drive. What's going on? They started out explosive, Kenny. Get into the other hits about the first half and the first quarter for Mizzou, but it was an awesome start to the game.
Yeah, Theo Wees really made up for that first drop touchdown. Brady Cook put it right into his hands, just dropped it, comes back. And we know Theo Wees is a big, strong receiver. He can high point balls. I think he's only 6'1", but he feels like he plays like he's 6'4". He can get up. He's strong.
He looks smaller than
he's
that.
A big guy. We even saw maybe a video from one of the reporters out in Kansas City who was at the game that he was gingerly walking off the field after. I didn't really see much of Theo Wees in the second half. I don't think he was really showing up as much, but we saw a lot of Theo Wees in that first half, and he finished the day with 80 yards on 4 receptions, that one 25-yard long gain, and the one touchdown. I think it was a good first half. You're firing on all cylinders, especially from Luther Burden as well. Just another monster performance. It almost felt like we weren't even seeing Luther Burden as much in the second half either. I felt like maybe LSU was locking him up a little bit more. He still had 11 receptions, 149 yards. He is if not the best wide receiver in the SEC. And Max said it well. He spoke about him so highly, talking about all these end of the season awards that he is in conversation for already as a true sophomore. And the one thing that really just stood out to me about Luther Burden as well is some of those end around plays. He got one of them. I don't know if this is correct on here, but I guess they do a little pass forward. It doesn't count as a rush, but we're seeing maybe just almost like last year's Luther Burden also getting involved. And he was picking up good gains there as well. And it means he's just showing us different forms of himself every week and breaking tackles, extending for more yards, 85 yards after catch today. Just another outstanding performance from him.
We're going to get back to the Mizzou LSU recap in just a second, but just a quick word from our sponsor, Bet Online. Football is back, and Bet Online is your #1 information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football, all at your fingertips with Bet Online's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, Bet Online gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember, use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And now back to the Mizzou LSU recap. Yeah, I mean, he was awesome. Malik Nabers was awesome as well for LSU. All the stars were showing that Max and the rest of us talked about early on. Because then, yeah, after that, it was back and forth haymakers for a little bit. We had 3 straight touchdowns. Mizzou scored 2 more times. LSU got a touchdown of their own. And Mizzou was responding. LSU punt, Mizzou touchdown. LSU field goal. Mizzou then started to crumble in it, and it got a little bad there. But let's stick on some of the good stuff from the Tigers for now. We saw Daniel Blood catch. He had his first catch. Was that on the first? That was on the opening drive, wasn't it? That set up the touchdown?
Yeah, it was on the opening drive, and I'm a big Daniel Blood guy. I talked to him a lot when he was when he was talking with Mizzou, and big catch there from him. And he looked good in this game, and we know he's battled some injuries, and didn't really play or wasn't even really available for those first few games of the season. He's from Louisiana. He went to the same high school as Justin Jefferson, the Vikings wide receiver, who went to LSU. Big day for Daniel Blood to pick up that first catch against the LSU Tigers. I mean, his home state team, probably the team he grew up watching the most. Pretty big for him, and kind of just shows you guys like Marquise Johnson, who had that fantastic catch at the sideline at the end of the game, didn't really mean much in the end. He's not playing like a freshman. And I think Daniel Blood could also be in that conversation. They keep maneuvering in. They kind of just show up on the field, and they're going to give you big plays because maybe the defense kind of doesn't notice them and doesn't realize who's on the field. But there's some really good freshman wide receivers making their way up. And I did want to mention this about that 2-point conversion. Totally just blanked my mind when you asked about it.
Yeah.
What do you think of some of the best calls Drinkwitz has made in his 10 years as Mizzou head coach? You think about that 2-point conversion against Florida. If Mizzou comes out with a win in this game, that's another one. That 2-point conversion is something you think about. You playing aggressive from early on. Sometimes you see an onside kick to start the game. And Mizzou did that against, was it Memphis? And you see this 2-point conversion right out of the gates. Those are like some of those, you let your balls hang, your nuts hang is what why am I blanking on his name? He used to say that for Mizzou before he left for Georgia, Dominic Lovett.
Oh, Lovett. Yeah.
That's what you want to see. You want to see these aggressive plays. And I don't think Drinkwitz was being, too cute early on. He was just being aggressive, and that was a good way to start it.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the 2-point conversion call as well. And yeah, cool to see for Blood. Marquise Johnson, 2 catches, 42 yards is what I'm looking at for him. Yeah, behind Burden, Weiss, and Cooper, the big 3, obviously out wide for Mizzou. You have those 2. And then I'll throw another true freshman in the mix, Kenny. You knew we were going to talk about this when Mizzou fans saw him score. We had a Brett Norfleet TD in this game. That was awesome to see. The big man, the big freshman, got on the board. That was his only catch, 1 catch for 9 yards and a touchdown. He made some good blocks, but he looked good. Yeah, it was there's some playmakers. Do you have anything on Norfleet?
Yeah, and it's just maybe more a shot at Tyler Stevens. He comes over from the MAC in Buffalo. He was the starter last year. He had that touchdown against Georgia, a very big game, loss at home. It's just the 3 drops. They were balls that you should catch. They weren't bad passes from Brady Cook. I'm not going to throw anything at Brady Cook on those plays. Those are balls that need to be caught. Very unfortunate, just plays for him, and I just don't know how you move forward with him as a starter. Maybe just based on experience, you might not give Brett Norfleet the most run at the tight end position, but Norfleet's shown that he can block, and he's overcome injuries as well. He's receiving as well. You see him on the field. He is ginormous for being an 18, 19-year-old. We talked about that. And Max came on. He talked about the size of this guy, and he's getting bigger.
Yeah, huge.
And he's filled into the frame. It's not just like he's 6'8". He's strong, and there's muscle there. I don't know. I think you just need to evaluate that tight end position. That's something Eric Link and Drinkwitz and Eric Kirby Moore, everyone needs to get involved to try to figure out what they're going to do moving forward. We've even talked about a guy like Ryan Horskamp, who came out of nowhere last year, not even on the depth chart this year. Max Wisner, another tight end that could be in conversation maybe to get some more reps, but that's kind of inexcusable to have those 3 drops in this game.
Yeah, he was bad. I was getting really, really frustrated watching those. I mean, it was one of those, my grandma could make that catch moment, Yeah, he was not good, but Norfleet, it was good to see. And yeah, great call from Max. We asked that question. I think it was you, right? He asked him like last minute kind of in that, and then we got the quote out of Max, and he ends up scoring a touchdown. So that was a good shout from us, I guess, patting ourselves on the back. Other good things. Before we get to Cook, because there's a lot to digest with Brady Cook. Cody Schrader was awesome in this game. 13 carries, 114 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was making play after play. Mizzou got a little, I think, pass dependent, and then it was literally, I think Robert Griffin III was saying it on the broadcast, like they need to make sure they're balancing out their attack, have the run game going. And on that play, Cody Schrader ripped a long one and almost scored. I don't remember how that drive ended up, but yeah, 3 touchdowns today. He was great. And Brady Cook as well, talking a little bit about him, was good on his legs this time. I think we're seeing him get a little more comfortable after that injury in the K-State game. And so that's good to see, is that they were able, especially in the first half, to find, I think, that balance between pass and run.
I think we can both agree that Cody Schrader isn't the fastest guy. He can be explosive. He can find holes. Maybe the stamina isn't there for him really, but he made some explosive runs today, and you didn't see them get negated for penalties. And that's something that's really hurt this team in the past, especially I think 2 weeks ago. I think there was even one late against Vanderbilt gets drawn back because of a penalty. I was just kind of waiting. He had that 52-yard run. I was like, okay, where's the holding? You're just waiting to see what happened. Big explosive plays from him, and he's going to get caught. There are defensive backs that are fast from him. They can run him down. He's just shifty. He can run through people. I wouldn't really worry that maybe he's not the fastest guy out there. He's still getting yards, and he's putting this offense in position to score. He averaged 8.8 yards per carry today. Very good day for Cody Schrader. And I think they mentioned on the broadcast, wasn't RG3, it was the main broadcaster, that Cody Schrader stepped into this running back position because of injury. I don't think that's the truth. He kind of stepped in this running back position because of just the play of the running backs that were there. I mean, Nathaniel Pete was also a transfer, and he just kind of stepped up, kind of came out of nowhere. We all know the story about Cody Schrader and how he got here. I think a booster showed Drinkwitz the film, and he just kind of slipped his way in and really just worked for this job. And you can't praise Cody Schrader enough for how well he ran against today. Another offensive guy you mentioned just briefly, but I really want to shout him out, is Mookie Cooper. Cooper just does his job. He goes out there, it just does it. I don't really see any missteps from Mookie. He's not the biggest guy in the field, but he plays like he is. He just does his job every single time out of the slot. And there was one play at the beginning of the game that he was lined up in the backfield. LSU calls a timeout. They come out of the timeout. He's back in the backfield, goes in motion, gets a first down out of the backfield from a pass from Brady Cook. He just does it. I mean, and then coming out in the second half, I think he was the first guy to touch the ball on the offense, and he gets a first down. He finds ways to get open. You're starting to see just Mookie Cooper look like this underappreciated weapon almost. You talk about Theo Weiss and Luther Burden. Mookie's really stepped into a good role this year. We saw a lot of flashes last year as well in his second year with the Tigers since he transferred from Ohio State. I can't talk about Mookie Cooper enough. I think I'm maybe a little bit too high compared to other people, but I think he just does his job well.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the underappreciated part, I think, is a key note. I think it was Peyton that said, like, it might have been you, but this was a guy who came in from Ohio State, and I think Mizzou fans expected big things from him right away. And it's taken him a bit to, get acclimated and find his role in this offense. And it's obviously come under Kirby Moore, where everybody's eating on that receiver core. Like it's pretty remarkable how all 3 of those guys and the freshmen we mentioned as well are, benefiting from his coaching and where he can be on the field. But you're right. He does go out and just make a play, and he is very, very, very big threat, especially as teams are going to continue to hone in on Luther and Theo Weiss. So yeah, definitely credit to him. Don't know if you said the stat line, but he had 7 receptions and 80 yards or 480 yards this afternoon. So yeah, Mookie Cooper was good. Did you want to touch on something with Luther on the run game as well?
I mentioned it briefly about, they weren't necessarily end around. It's like he's coming around and that you toss it to him. So it doesn't count as a rushing play. It's more of just a short forward pass. I always get kind of confused over that, where they're going to score it. You kind of see it differently in the NFL. You don't really see end arounds as much, but I talked about it before. We were seeing like a different Luther Burden. He was using more as a wide receiver. He wasn't using, the Tigers weren't using him in different facets on this offense. And Kirby Moore used him in different ways today, and it worked. Sometimes he would get swallowed up, really just run into 4 guys, but he found a first down on one of those plays, and overall just looked strong for Luther as well. And talking about the run game as well, as we get into Brady Cook here in a second, he started running a little bit more. And we know he banged up his knee a little bit, still has the brace on the right knee. He had a 12-yard rush. He's still like not sliding as correctly. I think he went forward on one of those slides.
Yeah.
I don't like that in college football you count sack yards as minus rushing yards for a quarterback. I don't have the full yards about how good he looked today. It says he had 5 attempts for 9 yards, but he did have that 16-yard rush. It looks good for Brady Cook that he can start using a little bit more movement, and we know he's been airing the ball out really well.
Yeah. That is an annoying stat you add. And so, yeah, let's get into him, because I think, that's where we can start to get into some of the things that hurt Mizzou today and ultimately, kind of cost them in this game, because it sounds like we're talking about a win. And I think that's the appropriate way to approach this game, because the thing I thought, for Mizzou fans generalizing a bit is like 49-39 loss to LSU, yes, at home, it ain't that bad in the full scope of things in my opinion. But getting into Brady Cook, I thought for the most part, he played pretty well again. Through 30 for 47, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns. They're obviously letting him air it out. We saw a little bit more use of his legs, but obviously the big storyline is going to be the streak is over. He threw a pick today and threw another pick late on in the game in garbage time, a pick 6 that I didn't rewatch the first interception, but I thought the second one was, obviously it's a pick 6, so it's just going to seem worse, but he was staring down, I believe it was Luther Burden, on that second INT, and the first one wasn't great either. So yes, another big day yardage wise, got a couple touchdowns, but those 2 mistakes obviously came back to cost Brady Cook in this one. What was your take on his performance?
Yeah, you lose the SEC record. I mean, I guess you don't lose the SEC record; it just gets snapped at
Right.
a leap year worth of passes. You get 366.
Oh.
So you look at that final stat line. He did throw 47 passes, and he completed 30 of them for 395 yards. Those 2 picks, in my mind, that first one, it kind of comes to, you've been rolling so well, something will happen. You'll hit a bump in the road, and you just won't see a defender, and they're just going to pick it off. That second one, it's the garbage time touchdown. It seals the game. Like, that was the biggest play of the game for LSU, just to seal it right there, not even let Mizzou get past the 50 after that beautiful punt from the LSU punter. And really what it comes down to in that second half, it just pivoting off Brady Cook real quick, is that Tigers only scored 14 points. They scored 25 in the first half. They only scored 14 in the second half. The Mizzou Tigers, that is. LSU scored 32. Sure, you can subtract that touchdown, 25-14. LSU just outplayed them. You look at the line, though, Brady Cook still had a good game. I mean, he threw for almost 400 yards. The 2 picks, I mean, that second one is more concerning than the first one. Just you're in that big moment, and that's just how it ends. Very unfortunate. But as I mentioned, I did like how Brady Cook is starting to use his legs a little bit more. Seems like he's working really past that knee injury, and it's him at full strength, firing on all cylinders, especially with how much better he is as a passer this year, how much more confident as a passer this year. I think it'll work well for him, especially if he can have those legs to run. And I remember Drinkwitz would always say that his offense, I know it's more of Kirby Moore's offense, it's still, still Drinkwitz's team. He asks for 2 first downs with the quarterback's legs. That's why he wanted Jayden Daniels. When he was in the portal 2 years ago, Jayden Daniels was one of Drinkwitz's prime targets because he could run and he could also pass. And that's where I think we need to talk about now is how good Jayden Daniels was. Even with the injury, he missed the second half of a drive. He was running all over Mizzou. And that's the one caveat, or I guess one of the multiple caveats of this game. That run defense for the Mizzou Tigers just did not really step up. I can't sell Jayden Daniels short. This guy should be in the race for the Heisman. They just could not stop him.
You can't sell him short, but yeah, I mean, let's get into it. I want to go back to what Max said. We had kind of summarized when he was previewing this game, like both of these offenses are going to explode. It's just how it is. They both have playmakers that are tough for any defense to stop. That's what we saw. It was a 49-39 game. You had Logan Diggs, the running back, and we'll get into the running back, had 134 yards and a touchdown. Malik Nabers, 146 yards and another touchdown. Luther Burden popped off for Missouri. We talked about it. But what Max said was this Missouri defense is more primed to make a play. At least they've shown they're more primed to make a play when it matters to get a stop, to slow this offense down enough to put itself in a position to win the game. And the literal opposite happened. And yes, it's frustrating to see that, the turnovers for Brady Cook. It's frustrating to see the fumble that set up a fourth and 35 or whatever it was. But yeah, when it boils down to it, I mean, it was so frustrating just to see hole after hole open up for Jayden Daniels and yeah, you're right. Take nothing away from him. He got popped when he scored that touchdown that got called back and was playing hurt the rest of the game. Like you could tell he was openly like wincing. He hurt his ribs and still was electric, especially running the ball. But, you know, when you have a 3rd and 3, a chance to get off the field around midfield and you give up a touchdown, you know, late on in the game like that, that for me was the play that defined it for me. When I saw that touchdown go, I was like, Mizzou's offense is going to give itself a chance in this game, but the defense just, it wasn't helping. It didn't step up when it mattered. It didn't force a turnover. It didn't even get or allow LSU to get off the field. Like it was very, very frustrating. And the run defense, you know, I mentioned that in addition to Daniels's phenomenal 130 yards on the ground, they let Logan Diggs, a fellow former walk-on, I believe they said, just like Cody Schrader is, you know, run all over them for over 100 yards. So that is where the story, I think, wrapped up and really put the nail in the coffin for Mizzou in this game.
Well said, Jack. And it's explosive plays. You have to limit explosive plays against one of these teams, especially one of these teams that has a Heisman caliber quarterback and a great running back in Logan Diggs. And I'm going to give you even more numbers to think about here. The longest rush for Logan Diggs was 34 yards. Jayden Daniels, 35 yards. Longest pass for Nabers reception, 39. Thomas, 42. And then I didn't even know about this guy, but Lacey.
He had the
Lacey,
touchdown.
And he had a touchdown for 20 yards, and that was his only reception of the day. Those are the big explosive plays that Blake Baker's been talking about for the last 2 years. I don't think he's really in the press conferences as much this year. I'm not on the beat anymore, but last year he would always talk about how the Mizzou Tigers need to limit explosive plays. They just didn't do it today. They came out and they showed glimpses of a better defense, some good stops, especially we're going to talk about it later about that fourth quarter and inside the 2 minutes. But man, there's just big plays LSU was just pulling out. I wish I could see the yards on third down for LSU, because I think it'd be a lot. I think it'd eat up a big chunk of their total yardage, more than you probably expect. They went 6 for 12 on third downs, just overall strong plays when they needed it most. And you just didn't see Mizzou's run defense really show up. And we've talked about some issues with maybe not really seeing the defensive tackles really play up to bit and forcing havoc on those inside offensive linemen to bring some pressure from those guys on the outside. I don't know. We're talking about missed tackles as well from the linebacker position. And we're going to talk about some of these penalties against the linebackers and just the defense, both defenses in general.
It was sloppy.
It was sloppy on both sides. And there's just one play I wanted to point out. Dalen Carnell, who's at the star position, the hybrid between more of a linebacker, a nickel corner, a safety. He's just, he's another defensive back out there that can do it all. And Dalen Carnell's proven that he's one of the most underrated guys last year. Look at his overall numbers this year. You can tell me what you think. But right now, he saw it. He knew that it was going to be a run play. He jumps in off that edge and just gets the wrong guy. And an explosive run play out on the outside, and it's just frustrating because he knew it was a run play, just had the wrong guy. Another read option, zone reads that LSU looked like they were struggling with in the first half. It worked so well for them in the second half. It's like they figured out what they needed to do. Just multiple parts of, we're going to probably miss things that this defense maybe struggled on, or even just, did well that we're not mentioning. But there was just so many of those plays that you'll remember. It's like, oh, if this had gone the other way, if they'd gotten the stop on third down, this game could be different.
Yeah. Oh, also, quick correction. I thought it was Lacey. It was Brian Thomas that had that 48-yard touchdown that gave LSU the 27-25 lead. Just want to clarify that first. But you're right.
42.
42-yard touchdown. Yeah. But that was another play I remember being like, man, if you could have gotten off the field in that drive and that flipped the momentum, and obviously LSU took the lead, changed the course of the game. But yeah, it was so frustrating. And you mentioned the explosive plays. Listen, it's one thing to let Malik Nabers, go one-on-one against a corner and you get mossed for a touchdown. It's Malik Nabers. It happens. But when Malik Nabers is standing in acres of open space that anybody catching the ball is going to, make a big play out of, because you're not communicating, you're not making the right reads, you're not covering well enough. Like, it's just inexcusable. And it's like, there were things that happened in this game that, I think reminded us why Mizzou is not there yet as making that jump into the elite of the SEC. I don't think this game should worry people in terms of how this season could end up and the potential that this team still has to have a really good year compared to what we've seen in the Drinkwitz era before. But there are just plays, and then you mentioned just some of the miscues that in a game like this cost you. I mean, we do have to bring it up. Johnny Walker. It sucks, man, when someone's laying on your leg and you have to kick out and they call a penalty on it. That stinks. It's a little bit harsh. I didn't even see this. So he spit on a guy, and that was his other unsportsmanlike, apparently.
I don't think ESPN caught the action of him doing it. I was watching, looked away for a second, another TV, looked back, and he's out of the game. They didn't show a replay of what actually happened, but there was a hot mic, and someone said that he spit on a player, spit on someone. And just the frustration, frustration's got the best of him there. And I know that I saw the play where he was laying down. He was trying to kick that offensive lineman off of him. It looked like the offensive lineman just could have gotten up, and he had to be helped off the field. Like, he was actually banged up after that play. It wasn't just frustration. He was actually hurting, and it just got the best of him there. And, for Johnny Walker, who's really stepping into a starting role after being a backup these last 2 years, you just gotta put your head down. You gotta be able to control your emotions. Definitely a learning experience for him. He's probably beating himself up about it. Probably just still pissed off about how this went. But that's a guy. You need that guy out there. You need the defensive ends. Have been kind of shaking with D-Rob. He even mentioned that he wasn't 100%. He had that calf injury, and he came back out, and he had that strip. He had the fumble at the end of the game. They didn't recover it, but he still played some explosive. He had some explosive jumps off the edge. And still was hurt. And in the defensive end position, you just can't take a loss like that, losing Johnny Walker.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I didn't even realize this either. I know he's been having a good season. They showed a graphic. He has like double the amount of QB like pressures of the next Missouri like defensive lineman or whatever, or just player on defense, that's wild. I didn't realize, like, especially with Darius Robinson, like, it's that much that he's leading in that. And yeah.
Darius Robinson might be a little bit more up there. I mean, he missed the last. Okay. He missed the Vandy game and parts of that.
I guess you're right. He was injured.
But still, it kind of feels like a quiet year for him that he's putting up all those pass rushing numbers.
Yeah, and so you have a guy that can rush the passer, get to the quarterback, and a guy in Jayden Daniels who's playing phenomenal. That you need all the pressure you can get, all eyes on him, and they didn't have it after he got ejected. So just you can't do those things. Do we want to take now? We don't have to go too long because I think we should focus mostly on what's on the field. Do you want to talk about some of the refereeing this afternoon briefly?
Yeah.
I'll speak for all Mizzou fans quickly. What the F is a disconcerting signal? I mean, my God. Like, I think two of them were actually called on LSU. No, I think it was
two on Mizzou.
Two were on Mizzou, and one was on LSU. The first one, they called Tyron Hopper, who was like trying to, as a defensive captain, like, hype up his guy, and clapped, and they thought he was trying to gauge the snap count. Like, do you think defensive players, that's the last thing they're worried about is throwing the offense off in a snap count? Like, they got other crap to worry about. I've never, you and I both, we said off air, we both never heard of this penalty. It was called 3 times in one game. What the hell? Like,
I remember the first time it was called, I was like, okay, I think I've maybe heard of this before, because it's maybe like something you only hear every once in a while. Got called a second time, like, okay, what is going on? Is this a new flag that
rule?
I've never seen this before. We watched every single Mizzou game the last couple of years. I don't remember anything like this. And the only time I can kind of remember is that the Mizzou offensive line in 2020 mentioned that the Tennessee defensive players were trying to mess up the hard count. They were trying to mess up the snap. They were clapping, saying stuff to get the offensive line to jump. And I've never heard anything of that since. And this was kind of eye-opening. It's like you learn something new every day. But man, it was going against both teams. Maybe it's something that the NCAA is telling referees to look at more. Maybe the SEC. But it was bizarre.
It was disconcerting. That's not the right use of that. But it was so strange. Like, it felt like a rule that like the ref like really knows that rule and was like, I'm gonna show what I got.
Yeah, they don't know, but I know it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he's gonna expose them. And then and there was just and it was on both sides. Like, I am by no means, I don't think, calling this a ref show. There was a Mizzou free touchdown gifted to them by the officials because Xavier Delgado very clearly false started to the point where the LSU guys got up and pointed at him, and they still snapped the ball and let it go. That it was that one, and then the other bad one against, or going, what should have gone against LSU, was the face mask on Brady Cook, where he ends up getting a sack and Mizzou has to punt that away. I don't think either of those calls, you know, especially because Mizzou lost, I don't really think either of them ended up, you know, costing. There was other things that happened that cost Mizzou in this game aside from the refereeing, but it was just, we had to mention it, especially with this goofy, disconcerting signals, whatever. You know, I hope that's not a thing that defenders can't clap anymore because they're throwing off the snap count, but there was some strange refereeing.
For sure. And I kind of want to pivot off this. I don't really have anything else to add about this refereeing.
That's okay.
I think there was one thing that kind of stood out to me is that I think D-Rob pulled off Jayden Daniels' helmet. And I think the call is face mask, but I'm pretty sure he grabbed the back of his helmet, pulled it off. I don't know if there's maybe you don't really call it anything else.
It's probably still
a face mask. Yeah, you just pulled his helmet off. And I was like, that was the most aggressive I've ever seen D-Rob play. One thing I just want to mention before we put into one of our next points is that the play of the safeties has been kind of concerning as well. We've mentioned it before with Carles and Charleston, who were great last year. They really stepped up, especially Charleston coming over from Clemson, looked strong. He almost looked like a captain out there, even though he wasn't wearing the C on his jersey. And Carles comes back for another year, hoping to boost his draft stock, his pro stock. There's been so many just open plays on post routes, you know, just plays over the middle of the field. Wide receivers are getting open. They're just going to the wrong guy, not really helping out their corners on these deep balls. And it's concerning, especially the tackling. And you know who's that? Blake Baker's, these are his safeties. That's his position group. He's mentioned it last year. He made a joke. He's like, I need to talk to the safeties coach. He's like, he was the safeties coach. I think he needs to talk with these guys. And these are guys that the NFL caliber, they're pro caliber safeties in Charleston, Carles, and they're just not playing up to that standard they played at last year. Just a thing that they step back on this defense. You look at the safety position, even like Travis Johnson coming over from Florida, he hasn't looked all that great too. That one deep ball that you mentioned earlier, I think it was to Thomas. Travis Johnson just got to the wrong guy.
Burned.
Yeah, I think that was might have been Drayden Norwood's receiver that he was marked. I gotta look back on it right now. I can look at it when you're talking, but yeah, Travis Johnson went to the wrong receiver, and it's just unfortunate. They're just choosing the wrong ones. They're not really recognizing this offense.
The whole secondary, and I think even the whole defense it's been so strange to see. Obviously, it's great that the offense is stepping up, but again, I'll keep going back to it. It just feels like a flip of what we've seen, where this offense has to make plays for the defense. Oh yeah, who was it?
It was Marcus Clark.
Oh,
it's my guy. Very unfortunate, but he was the one who the touchdown came on.
Well, still, I mean, even guys we're liking aren't making plays. I mean, we mentioned that how crucial a turnover could have been. Cad had 3 picks in 3 games leading up to this, and you know he did make the one very good play that denied a touchdown. I think it was on Nabers. Did the buckle or put the sword back, or whatever you call celebration. Yeah.
And he did. I always thought it was he pushed like Jayden Daniels. Like it was a good play. He almost sacked him, but forced Jayden Daniels just to make a throw into no one. So he was good. I mean, good as a blitzer as well.
Yeah, I've always thought that was the sword was a buckle, like you were like buckling them in because it's like locked down. But I didn't think of it that it was the sword. Like that's how dumb I am. But there's just some rough play on the defense, some just open holes for Jayden Daniels. I think the run defense is the theme. As tough as the secondary did look at times, I think again you can put the caveat a little bit that it is LSU. These guys just have weapons that few other SEC teams have. It's no excuse, but it does help to ease that a little bit. I want to dive into the ugly, and I think it really, you can call the whole second half with spurts of good. You could call it all ugly. Mizzou, you mentioned the 25 points in the first half. They responded to every single LSU drive with points up until the end of the half when Mevis made that 50-yard field goal. Immediately, you come out in the second half, you get the ball, a chance to take the momentum back. Because even though Mevis made that field goal, I was nervous. I really thought that LSU had, all the momentum going in halftime. And then, you mentioned it. Now, I didn't even realize because so much happened in this game, like how big this was. Mevis had that miss that it was way off. I mean, he shanked it. And we thought an LSU guy got in there. We thought it might have been blocked. They showed it again, was not blocked. And now looking back, like that almost set in motion the events of that second half. But, maybe You want to talk about the ugly, or since I'm on Mevis, maybe the special teams being a big issue here this afternoon?
Yeah, if Peyton was on here, he'd be ripping in Eric Link left and right. He'd be asking why Eric Link still has a job. Eric Link came over with Drinkwitz from App State. They've been close for a long time. It's just Harrison Mevis has missed that field goal with 11 minutes left in the third quarter. LSU responds to the field goal. This game is 42-39. Of course, LSU did go for 2, and they pushed it to that mark. But if Mizzou has those 3 points, we don't really know where this game goes from there.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be more the momentum on the Columbia Tigers and not the Bayou Bengals. We don't know. But at the same time, if everything goes the same, it's a tie game. Right? LSU goes for 2 to tie it. They don't go for 2 to force a tie if a field goal is made. And that's just what kind of comes out of it. And Harrison Mevis did miss that 54-yarder at the end of the game as well, kind of just looking to put points up on the board. Onside kick, it just last kind of resort. You're going to play it till the last whistle. I don't know if that maybe the wind got too much of it, but Harrison Mevis has proven that he can boot them. It's just there's not much consistency these last 2 seasons, and we talked about it a lot last year. Looked good this year with that 61-yarder. Just those 2 misses, it just feels so uncharacteristic for Harrison Mevis.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's very bizarre, the lack of consistency, and that's something. I mean, a kicker, it's all mental. Like, you gotta, especially for a guy like him, he has the leg to kick it from anywhere. So that's just all mental. And then while we're on the old Eric Link show, I mean, special teams, it was a rough one. You'll have to remind me about the Luther Burden punt, but I mean, I literally, when Luke Bauer was about to do this punt that I'll talk about, the 17-yard punt, which was rough. I was literally saying to someone I was watching the game with, oh yeah, like they had a punter from Australia that they benched, and this guy's been playing really well. So sorry, Luke Bauer, I maybe jinxed you there, but that was oof. I mean, I know special teams coaches, you can't account for just sometimes shanking a punt, but you can't shank a punt in this game. It again is like little things, like a missed field goal where you don't know what the score could have been down the road. A 17-yard punt, maybe you boot that long, they have worse field position. It's these little things that add up.
I wanted to mention.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to mention that first punt to Luther Burden from Jay Bramblett, who had a great day. I mean, he seems like a good punter there for LSU. It was 57 yards. He got down to the 13. I want to say I want to say that Luther was inside the 30. He was somewhere inside the 30 near his sideline. And he had it there with 2 LSU defenders. I don't know if he just didn't call for a fair catch. He was going to get blown up if he didn't. Those guys were waiting for him to catch it. He calls a fair catch. He gets it there. It bounced back maybe, let's say 15 yards, 14 yards, something within that range. And it just felt, like silly that he just didn't call the fair catch. I don't know if he thought there was maybe like some front spin on it that he was just going to hit, or backspin. He was just going to hit it and just go the other way. And they were just going to bounce in the LSU defender's hands. But at the same time, I was watching that punt block, and the 2 gunners, there were 2 gunners, and they were just left open. There was no one there to block them, no one there to run with them. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, no way Luther's going to return this. And I think we've kind of talked about it before. We don't even need to talk about returning kicks anymore. I know Peyton, if he was on here, he'd be talking about that.
They fair caught them all, right? I don't think
they fair caught them all. Yeah,
didn't even.
Nice. Yeah, and Marcus Johnson's back there as well. And if he gets a hold of one of those inside, I would let that guy run. Mizzou still scored on that. That was the touchdown pass to Theo Weiss on that drive. It just felt like you were putting yourself even further back, and I just don't think he read the ball well necessarily. I'm gonna pull up the whole special teams chart here, but Luke Bauer, his second kick really made up for it. Or second punt. His second punt was for 73 yards. Really got a good spin on inside the 20. It was he averaged 45 though, because that first punt was 17 yards. And you're just seeing some inconsistent play from the punters. Saw this last year as well. There's a punter battle then too. Stonehouse left for Syracuse because he didn't get his scholarship. Luke Bauer, who was on the team last year, steps up here and takes the job. It's still not going well. I mean, props to him for responding with that second punt, but that first punt is just not what you want to see.
Yeah, it again was just, that will lose you games. I mean, in games like this, especially these miscues and special teams decisions. So again, just something that we're going to keep touching on as it continues to just be bad. Let's get to the end of the game, because, that was just where I think it it all, I mean, obviously it all fell apart, but just the again, little things, you know, you have a 3rd and 1, on, you know, in plus territory, you're driving, great 2-minute drill offense leading up to that point. And then, you know, a Connor Tollison snap. What's the official? Just illegal snap infraction.
Mhm.
You know, messes that up, drops him back. Again, you think about what would happen if that play doesn't go that way, if he doesn't do that. They're certainly not passing the ball. Brady Cook certainly not fumbling to set up a 4th and 30. And then, you know, they're certainly not getting the ball back in at the 5-yard line and then throwing a pick 6 to seal the game. So just frustrating stuff. And then we should talk about that 4th and 31 too. But you can get your take on maybe mistakes and that kind of sequence at the end of the game.
Shooting yourself in the foot. We talked about this offensive line playing better. Max came on here and he said there's guys on this offensive line that grade out as above average guys, not just superstars. I mean, this offensive line just cohesive above average and over grades. And you're playing a great game, and you just come out with that false start, and then the snap infraction. It's just frustrating. I just don't know why these offense. You're gaining experience. You're in your 2nd year as a starter for Connor Tollison. He played decent in this first couple of games, but just these little mistakes, they carry. And I mean, that's where you think about, you know, you could lose your job any day. You know, no one's job is guaranteed ever. You're not, you know, that's how it should be for everybody. But man, it doesn't feel like there's like progress in those when the lights turn on moments. You talk about the Georgia game last year as well. And Peyton, he was on here, like I keep bringing him up. He would rip into these guys a lot more than I would. But like the Mitchell Walters penalty last year, false start against Georgia, this one again for Connor Tollison. You know, you'll make mistakes. You'll make mistakes on maybe some drives where it's maybe like 13 minutes left in the 2nd quarter. You're at 2nd and 4. But these are the moments that you need to lock in. Nothing should be bothering you. Nothing should be pushing you to false start. I mean, you're the one who controls the ball. And it's just, I mean, it's annoying. I bet it's going to be something that he's going to be carrying with him for the rest of the week. And then he wants to get back on the field and prove himself again. It's just, I wouldn't want to be those guys right now.
Yeah, you're right. It seems like it happens for this offensive line. If it doesn't happen a bunch and then it's a main talking point of the game, it becomes a main talking point of the game because it happens when it matters the most. And so that absolutely sucks. I mean, I think it also speaks to the fact that this offense had simply no help from the defense, because you're right. The offensive line, I think, was relatively penalty free in an otherwise pretty sloppy game. You know, overall, we had a lot of holding as these QBs were liking to run around. But you know, the offensive line, like they didn't rack up penalties the way we sometimes see them do, but they got the one that ended up mattering pretty much the most because, again, it backed them up out of a 3rd and very manageable. And we saw Cody Schrader having a good game. He probably hand that ball off to him. 1st down, you're cooking on your way to continue that drive. Instead, it's a 3rd down. And then, you know, Brady Cook had 2 of these. I believe on the first one, were both of them hits from the blind side, both of the fumbles that caused them. I know the second one was, and then it rolled back all the way back, but was that
the second one was? I don't even remember the first one, to be honest with
it's
you.
Nice. It's nice, right? To like, you know, think about, or like that interception he threw earlier. It's nice to be like, oh, this might not actually come back to bite them because the offense is playing otherwise so well. But then, yeah, the snap infraction confounds into the fumble, which confounds into a 4th and 31, which, okay, what did you think? You think the going for it was a smart choice? Did you like the play call? Should they have punted? I mean, I know it ultimately didn't matter, but it was a big play.
I liked what our friend Max Baker said, brought it up. The announcer said, oh, it didn't matter in the end. They got the stop. They forced the punt. And LSU put them in a coffin, put them inside their own 10-yard line. If you punt the ball there and you stop them, I mean, you're probably getting the ball maybe 20, 30 yards closer to the end zone because you're going to punt it, put them, we'll say inside the 10. I don't know how Luke Bowers would have done in that situation. Maybe inside the 15, you get a stop there. You don't let them get a 1st down. They're kicking it. I don't know if they would let Luther return that. If they do, I don't know if he's going to get necessarily a lot of yards. Seemed like LSU was all over punts today. You're in a better position, and I think that's what it comes down to. It was an interesting play. I think RG3 mentioned that Theo Weiss did have another option to hook it back. I think Luther was trailing him because it went to Daniel Blood first, then to Theo Weiss. And Theo Weiss had someone on his right side. Opportunity there to maybe even get more yards. It's just kind of frustrating because when you look at it, you're at the 41-yard line on 3rd and 1. That's field goal range technically for Mevis, even though he did have a pretty bad day. At the same time, you're down 3 points going into that with 3 minutes to go. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating on all facets.
It's so like, yeah, I mean, this was a very, very winnable football game. And it's nice because I think, again, broadening all of this out, Missouri fans overall, I don't think should be worried in terms of the rest of the season. Like I've been saying, like there was the offense especially did a lot of things that were very promising. They held around and went shot for shot basically with an LSU team. I guess, it wasn't quite shot for shot, but it was a tale of two halves more so, but it equated, I think, just about by the time, the final whistle blew. But again, yeah, it's just the little things. We can say it over and over again. My take on the 4th and 31, like I at first was like, yeah, you punt this, get the field position. I know your defense hasn't made a stop all day, but like you said, if they do, which they did, you end up getting that ball in a lot better field position than where they were. Brady Cook, maybe doesn't throw that pick 6. You can go to different plays because you're not starting from your own end zone. So yeah, or even if you were going to go for it, in my opinion, you go for it's maybe fine. Arm punt it then. Have them chuck it down the field where if you throw a pick, you're still in a better spot. Like if you maybe punted it versus doing the check down thing and whatever that was. But again,
one thing I'll jump in here for one thing about the arm punt. I wonder if they've learned that ball goes in the air, do not catch it, just knock it down. Put that ball in the turf, because if you get that ball, I think I'm gonna look it up here. It's wrong on the stat broadcast right now. I think they were inside their own 20, 25.
Yeah.
So if they hit that, I mean that's ball game right then and there. It's just,
you make a good point. I guess you're right.
They should have just punted it. That's where I stand on that hill. And people could disagree with that, and I completely understand. I just think in the long run, if you get the stop there after the punt, rather than giving up the ball on downs, I think you're in a better position.
Yeah, you're right. I guess that's why I'm not a coach. You don't think of the.
That's why I should be the coach.
Yeah, Kenny should be the coach. That's why we have this show, right? Because we all know better. But yeah, again, it's all these little things. It's all these little what ifs that put you in a position to win this football game. But again, I'll put some positivity on it. It's freaking nice that they were in a position to win this football game. I mean, it is nice that LSU didn't come in here and just put Mizzou on big fraud watch and beat them by 30 in their own backyard and have like a get right game for themselves. I mean, this Missouri team can compete. There's just things they continue have to iron out. And those are things that are going to remain very, very frustrating for everybody involved because they were so close. They were so close in this game. I mean, they were on their way to driving, and they were marching down the field every time they had the ball for the most part. And it was always ending in points, and that drive was going to end in points, and it came to an end because of mistakes.
I'm going to give you some final total numbers here too, just kind of wrapping up. And these numbers could change because I think one of those plays on the stat broadcast is wrong on the Theo Weiss hook and ladder at the end. Okay. So it's at 527 total yards for Mizzou, 533 for LSU, 1,060 yards total offense for both teams combined. Both teams did have 11 penalties, which I did not necessarily know that, like in my mind, I would not think LSU had 11, but they lost 83 yards on those 11 penalties and Mizzou lost 62. Those are just some of the things to point out. A very even game though in the stats columns, 23 first downs for both teams. But the big split to me is just those rushing yards. And we talked about that at length, 274 yards on the ground for LSU.
Jayden Daniels, man. I mean, that guy is freaking talented. They got a gem of a quarterback former future Missouri Tiger, Jayden Daniels. But yeah, he is a hell of a player. He's definitely should, I think, be in the conversation for the Heisman, trophy. It's tough because they have those 2 losses, but, also we should touch on this, from Wendell. because he did his big long visitors list again. So there was a lot of key guys down the line who saw this performance. Williams Nwaneri was there, Ryan Wingo was there, Jeremiah McClellan. You can go look at Wendell Shepard on Twitter to see like the full list. But I know they lost, but still kind of a good thing that they're getting those guys there, getting them to more games. Obviously bodes well for drinking recruiting. If you have a take on that.
It's seeing big games from Luther and Theo Weiss, Mookie Cooper, especially for those guys, those St. Louis kids, and Ryan Wingo and Jeremiah McClellan. You're seeing guys that grew up in the same area as you, in the same city necessarily, and they're playing well. I mean, take Theo Weiss out of that equation. You can talk about just Mookie Cooper and Luther Burden. Those are guys they looked up to, and that's good to see. Aiden Glover was there, the 4-star quarterback. Ryan Justice, Whit Hafer, who's from the Joplin area. Jude James. I'm going down this list again. There was another, I think it was 2026. Jackson Cantwell was one of the top guys in the class of 2026. That's someone to keep an eye on. And I'm not mistaken, his dad played at Mizzou, and he was there with him. So a guy to keep an eye on. I've started to see him a little bit more on these Rivals posts and interviews, and he's a big kid. I'd keep an eye out for him. And Juju Marks was also there. He recently committed. He's a 2025 prospect.
Nice. Yeah, so an abundance of recruits there for Drink. Watching definitely on the offensive side, those playmakers and those playmaking recruits are probably pretty excited at maybe the prospect of becoming a part of that offense.
Oh yeah, Christian Cantwell is his father, and he was in the track and field team from 2000 and 2003, and he was a shot put. He did shot put, and he was on Team USA in the 2022 London Olympics.
There you go. Fun fact. But yeah, okay. Deep breath. Did we miss anything? I'm sure there's stuff that, like, you know, we can get Peyton's take on things. Obviously we'll have the full show on Monday, but I mean, there was a lot to digest in this game. My final thing, I think my overall takeaway is, like, I'm not upset in terms of, or worried in terms of the future of how this season can go. Peyton said it himself, a loss to LSU isn't that bad. There are things that happened in this loss that are pretty bad, but a lot of things that happened that are good that kept this team around. They go to Kentucky tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week, rather. You know, yes, the defense has a lot to clean up. They have a little bit more of an opportunity, but Ray Davis is a freaking good running back. We're going to talk about it. So, you know, the run defense, that's my biggest, you know, bad thing, worry going forward for what this Mizzou team needs to sort out. Offensively, just keep doing what they're doing. I mean, throw Brett Norfleet the ball more, getting touchdowns, because we are their podcast. But yeah,
momentum was shifted, and that's something they'll have to control better against Kentucky on the road. Talk a little bit more about that game next week, especially the more rivalry aspect of it that really doesn't get as much credit. Other than that, I think we probably missed a couple things. It was such a hectic game. So much happened in this game. The guys and just the whole crowd looked dejected at the end after the pick six. It just felt, you know, that's when you knew, oh, look, did this really just happen? Did we really lose this? Down the line, you just have to move forward. You have to look at next week that you're 0-0, and that's the mentality that Mizzou has. There's a lot to work on, a lot to be happy about, but looking forward, you know, you just put this one behind you, and you're still in place to extend your season, and that's what they want. And this is kind of a learning experience, especially against one of the best quarterbacks in football.
Definitely a lot to take away. And yeah, we'll see how they can bounce back, if they can bounce back. You know, we've seen seasons collapse before. It was in very bad fashion against Vanderbilt in 2019. You know, something tells me this Missouri team, based on what I saw today, that was the good. I don't think they're going to let it collapse on them. That's just maybe a way too bold prediction. I don't know. But we'll see.
Happy halfway point. I can't believe we're already halfway through the regular season. It's crazy to think about. We're 6 games in, still haven't had a bye yet.
We're almost at basketball season. We had Mizzou Madness last night. For those Tiger fans that remember that, they started that last year. Looked like the lights worked this time, so that's good. RG3 was there too. So yeah, dude, we're gonna start talking about basketball soon. So keep the hope up, Mizzou fans, but this one stings, understandably. Yeah, it's going to sting for another week until you can, you know, hopefully have a bounce back game against Kentucky. That'll wrap it up for us. We'll have the rest of the show out on Monday, but we'll drop this obviously here this afternoon and evening. So everyone, go enjoy your football, go enjoy your NFL Sunday, and we will see you guys next time. And this has been the Unwritten Rule presented by Bet Online. See you guys.